This is a production of PBS Charlotte. On the front lines of your health.
All the things that we take for granted in our normal daily living were difficult for me.
Tales of desperation, determination, and human triumph from a safer way to manage pain after surgery.
What we found was opioid-free patients did extremely well. And in fact, at times after their surgery, during their recovery, they actually had less pain than the group of patients that were treated with the typical painkillers.
To the groundbreaking techniques that make surgery unnecessary.
It's got essentially no risk other than the discomfort of the injection.
Charlotte doctors are pioneering new medical breakthroughs.
We're flipping out, going, oh my gosh, this is so great, it actually worked.
And changing futures.
I can open a door again, pull my pants up, I can zip my coat up.
You will hear 4 life-altering stories.
They had me up and moving, I think it was the same day or the next day.
And meet the doctors behind them.
Seeing somebody who couldn't do the things that he wanted to do, couldn't be the dad that he wanted to be able to be that person to go out and do the things that he wants to do, I mean, that's ultimately the best reward of this job.
The medical breakthroughs we all benefit from tonight on Carolina Impact.
Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Amy Burkett. Our health has a direct connection to our quality of life. Medical problems impact everything from daily routines to our ability to earn a living. They can derail our mental health and burden our loved ones. Tonight, we take a look at the medical breakthroughs being made right here in Charlotte to make us healthier and get us back to our regular lives faster. We'll show you the progress being made to treat one of the most common sources of pain and tell you how technology is restoring function. Plus, you'll learn about a new technique for treating ligament, tendon, and muscle injuries. But first, stopping opioid addiction before it starts, inspired by the opioid crisis hitting communities across America, including our own. Doctors at Ortho Carolina are working on a new approach to pain management, one that doesn't rely on popular opioids like Oxycontin and hydrocodone, which are highly addictive. Our Sharon Smith shows us how this clinical trial goes beyond a Carolina impact.
Let's do some Tai Chi. Inhale and exhale.
Margot Williams loves practicing Tai Chi.
Get a nice stretch, but don't hurt your neck.
A short time ago, regular movement like this,
step right, palms pass,
was painful and simply out of reach.
Reaching up to a cabinet to pull down a plate, playing with children, going to the grocery store, driving, all those things are impeded when you're in severe chronic pain.
Don't hurt your shoulders. Put it where it's comfortable.
All the things that we take for granted in our normal daily living were difficult for me.
Margot needed another shoulder replacement surgery, so she went back to the doctor she trusted for the first surgery 5 years ago.
So here's Margot's shoulder, her right shoulder that has end-stage arthritis.
Dr. Nadi Hamid is a shoulder and elbow specialist at Ortho Carolina. He's also part of the team researching how to manage pain post-surgery opioid-free. Traditional painkillers like hydrocodone and Oxycontin are effective but addictive and have other side effects too.
We want our patients to be comfortable and we don't want to see them in pain. But there's a fine balance between comfort and safety.
The National Safety Council says opioids are overprescribed and often misused by patients who take too much for too long. Research shows 50% of patients taking opioids for at least 3 months are still on them 5 years later. And 4 out of 5 heroin users report their addiction started with pills, some straight from the medicine cabinet.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the opioid epidemic is getting worse.
You can't turn on the news or read the newspaper without reading an article about this. So the time is now.
Margot signed up for the trial, glad to help with research and hoping for a better recovery experience.
Give yourself a big breath.
I did like the fuzziness that the opioid medicine left me with and not having all my synapses firing.
Instead of opioids, she and other patients take a combination of non-addictive drugs at various stages, like acetaminophen, anti-inflammatories, and nerve pain blockers. The strategy is working.
What we found was the opioid-free patients did extremely well. And in fact, at times after their surgery, during their recovery, they actually had less pain than the group of patients that were treated with the typical painkillers.
And we're going to pause for like 3 seconds here with the shoulders relaxed.
Dr. Hammond is thankful patients like Margot make the research possible. He owes the idea to another patient who spoke up honestly about addiction.
He came to see me several years later to have his other shoulder replaced, and he was very forthcoming about this and is just getting his life turned back around. And he was really worried about the idea of going back on medications while he was going to recover from his second surgery.
The study shows what can happen with doctors listening, patients trusting, a medical team collaborating. Good news for those on the front lines of the opioid crisis in Charlotte.
This is a very common issue in our city where people are gaining easy access to medications.
Clinical addiction specialist Edward BLEVINS counsels people who have lost their jobs, relationships, everything, as they struggle with addiction.
Most clients or the people we work with are unaware of how they got to this point, because they don't just take it today and tomorrow the bottom falls out. But across time, life begins to change in small increments that leads to the big wham to where the whole bottom has dropped out.
This is the socket of the shoulder, and here's the ball, and you can see there's very little, if any, space remaining between the ball and the socket.
Research takes time too. The trial expands soon to other orthopedic surgeries. Dr. Hammond and the team hope for continued positive results.
Sink in the knees. We're going to take a little step to the left.
Meanwhile, Margot is glad to be active again. She's pain-free and feels good about participating in the trial.
I would say to anybody, give it a try, because what you're left with is a clear mind, and you don't have those other side effects either.
This time when we step left, we're going to float over there.
For Carolina Impact, I'm Sharon Smith reporting.
Thanks so much, Sharon. 70 patients are participating in that study. It's being paid for by a grant from the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation. Well, Connie MELE, Mecklenburg County Assistant Health Director, joins me now. And Connie, thanks so much for your time. This is such a huge issue.
It is, and we're impacted just like every other community in the country.
We hear about it nationwide, and we hear of some large areas. I've heard about it as a huge thing in Ohio, where both of us happen to actually be from. I've heard about it in Maryland. How does our county, Mecklenburg County, stack up against national numbers?
I think that we're probably right in the middle, along with many cities that are our size. We do have communities in North Carolina that have high incidences, such as Wilmington and Hickory. But here in Mecklenburg, we're probably right along the middle of the road in regards to the numbers of people that we have. But that doesn't mean it's not an issue and it's not a problem. It certainly is in this community.
What are some steps that you're taking to try and combat this?
So we have a Mecklenburg County Substance Abuse Task Force where we are looking at what are the important steps we need to take, and there are a number of them. And so prevention is certainly something we should be starting early in schools with kids and churches and every place we touch young children. And we have some of those in our community, but we need more. I think one of the best things that we can ask people to do is that if you are going to have any type of procedure and your doctor wants to prescribe pain medicine for you, that you say, I'm going to go ahead and try over-the-counter things first, and if those don't work for me, then I'll call you back and ask you to prescribe something. But I want to try using something less strong than a narcotic at this point in time. I think that would go a long way. The other part is if you have medications in your house, opiate medications, and again, those are morphine, Dilaudid, Oxycontin, Oxycodone, Vicodin, any of those kinds of medications. You need to have them either locked up, or you need to know how many you have in your bottle, and you need to dispose of them if you don't need them. I think we're bad in this country of keeping medication, especially pain medication, and in case we have a bad headache or we injure our back or we have another problem, we'll use that. Or we might even say to our spouse or our child or friend, oh, I've got some pain medicine. Let me give you a couple of those. That'll probably help. And we can't do that. That's really against the law because you're taking a prescription and giving it to someone else. But most importantly, having them available just means people have access. And we don't want people to have access. If you don't need them, you need to get rid of them. And there are take-back medication boxes located throughout the community that you can take them to. We have take-back medication days. We have one coming up in the near future, and people can take their medications there to get rid of them.
Unfortunately, we've probably all read articles nationally of people finding different doctors who they get a prescription from one doctor and then they go searching for another doctor to refill the prescription. Now, there's something out there to try and prevent that from happening as well.
So in July, North Carolina passed the North Carolina STOP Act, and one of the pieces of that legislation is that if a person goes to a doctor and gets a prescription, when they take it to the pharmacy will check a national register to be able to see whether that person has had prescriptions recently for another narcotic and be able to let the physician know that there was a problem. We also hope in the near future that physicians will be using the same database so that even before they prescribe it, they could go in, look up the person's name and make sure that they haven't had a prescription recently.
While opioid abuse and addiction seems to be the newest, hottest thing, it's still not the only thing. And we need to realize that there's just a whole lot of addictions out there, and it's not really impacting any one socioeconomic type, correct?
That's correct. And what people need to understand about addiction, I like to refer to it as an equal opportunity disease. It can happen to anybody. It doesn't matter where you live or how many children you have or what you do for a living. It can happen to anybody. And so it's important for people to understand that it can happen in their family. In fact, as I go around and talk with different groups, I have yet to have a group where there wasn't one person raise their hand that said they were not affected by someone who had an alcohol or a drug problem. And so we need to treat them all. It isn't just opioids. We need to address all the drugs of addiction.
But opioids does seem to be the thing that's getting so much national attention and such a fear. And I know even as a parent, when my son got his wisdom teeth taken out and they prescribed some strong pain medicine for him, I was that mean parent who wouldn't let him take any. And I'm like, you'll be okay. I survived it years ago, but we forget how much pain that is because, a little pain today, I think, is better than a lot of pain down the road. And so it's just tough, but that doesn't seem to match our societal norms, as you were saying.
Absolutely, it does not, because people expect that if they have some pain or discomfort, that they can call their physician and get a prescription to change how they feel, to take the pain away.
Connie MELE from the Mecklenburg County Health Department, we appreciate your information so very much.
Thank you, I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Now to another medical condition, putting a strain on American families. Back pain is so common that some 500,000 Americans a year have surgery to treat the effects of disc degeneration. Today, it's much less invasive, and recovery time is so much faster. Carolina Impact's Suzette Reed talked to a man who says spine surgery actually gave him a new lease on life.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him better than he was before. Better, stronger, faster.
Many remember the show The $6 Million Man. Modern medicine and technology rebuilt him in an era when such medical feats seemed impossible. Today, it's more than possible and available to many of us. 38-year-old John Norton is proof medicine and technology can indeed make us better and stronger.
So let's see you straighten this leg out all the way, real strong.
He passes the progress exam with flying colors. There is no sign of the debilitating back pain Norton lived with for most of his adult years.
There's nothing I can't do. I'm quite happy. I could hit the gym if I want to. I could wrestle around with the kiddos, go for a jog. So I'm back to being youthful again.
Norton says spine specialist Dr. Matt Chapman first helped to identify the source of the problem, fractures in the spine. Norton opted for surgery.
We took the disc material out and then we put a cage with bone graft in to get a fusion, in his case, from L4 to L5. And then we turned him over on the table and percutaneously through small incisions without disrupting the musculature of his back and his spine. Put pedicle screws in to offer some stability while the bones knit together in the front.
Here are the images of Norton's spine. Left is before surgery and right is after. You can see the cage-like device and screws. Norton says his recovery began almost immediately.
They had me up and moving, I think it was the same day or the next day. I was shocked how quick I was recovering.
It's been 1 year and 4 months since the surgery. 3 small scars, 2 on the back and 1 on his side above the hip, are the only signs left to remind him of what life was like before the procedure.
You can't help but, be down when you're hurting that bad consistently. And, just from my attitude of life in general, I missed out on, several years, with my kids. I'd come home from work and not be able to play with them. For the longest time, the docs would just write me a prescription for medicines, and they'd give me injections, and that would last for a short period of time, but it never solved the problem. I'm happy again, and I'm able to be with my family and do the things we want to do instead of just constantly being in pain and having to sit, no, I can't go with you guys, sorry, you guys go ahead without me.
And here are the pictures to show he's no longer left behind. Norton goes hiking with his sons, crawls through homemade obstacle courses, rides his motorcycle, and yes, he goes rock climbing regularly. How do you feel when you take a man who could barely walk to rock climbing?
It's really a pretty powerful feeling. I mean, I think that we all went into medicine to help people, and to see patients do so well. I mean, success can be judged by a whole bunch of different things. Seeing somebody who couldn't do the things that he wanted to do, couldn't be the dad that he wanted to be able to be that person to go out and do the things that he wants to do. I mean, that's ultimately the best reward of this job. That's why I come to work, is to see patients like that be who they want to be and kind of live up to their potential.
John Norton says for years he was a young man living in an old man's body. Well, today he is active, engaged, and living life the way he had only dreamed about for years. And in fact, he says his only regret is that he didn't have the surgery sooner. For Carolina Impact, I'm Suzette Ree.
Thanks so much, Suzette. John also told us for years he had to take strong prescription medications or get shots to live with his back pain. Today, all he needs is an occasional Tylenol or ibuprofen. Well, not every medical dilemma requires surgery. In fact, the human body has an amazing way of healing itself. That power is the cornerstone of our body's natural defense and longevity. Now doctors are keeping some patients out of the operating room by giving the body a little nudge to jumpstart that process. Carolina Impact's Jason Terzis explains.
It's a privilege reserved for only a select few. Running out of the tunnel, through the smoke, and onto the field at Bank of America Stadium. While fans yell and scream for Luke, Cam, and the rest of the Panthers, one guy fans aren't there to cheer for is Dr. Patrick Connor. He's been the team's head physician for 21 years.
As a head team physician, I'm kind of in charge of all their care.
Dr. Connor works on the Panthers sidelines at every single game, home and away, and oversees a game day staff that includes 3 doctors.
There are 19 healthcare personnel on the sidelines of every game. It's pretty crazy.
Dr. Connor deals specifically with shoulder, elbow, and knee injuries.
But I have a team of specialists behind me from Ortho Carolina and beyond to take care of hand injuries and foot and ankle and spine and neck, and then with other specialties like concussions, and we have a team dermatologist and a internist and pulmonologist and every single specialty, so I kind of orchestrate all that.
Dr. Connors accompanied the team to both of its Super Bowl appearances and was in the spotlight 2 years ago after performing surgery on Thomas Davis's forearm, allowing the star linebacker to play in the big game.
He broke his arm at the NFC Championship game, and he did very well. We fixed his arm, he did very well, and was able to play in the Super Bowl 13 days later.
While chances are you hadn't heard of Dr. Connor before, there is another guy around town you're probably very familiar with.
Hi friends, Scott Clark here.
You see him in those commercials all the time. Scott Clark, owner of 3 Charlotte auto dealerships. But when he's not selling cars, there's a good chance you'll find him on the golf course.
Well, I've been playing Oh, probably about 35 years, and my game is still terrible.
After all those years of swinging the golf clubs, Scott began having elbow pain.
And I just kept injuring my elbow over and over. It got so bad I couldn't swing anymore.
That's when Scott sought out Dr. Connor for help.
When I went in there, I was in excruciating pain.
It's essentially just the opposite of tennis elbow. It's golfer's elbow. It's on the inside of the elbow, a partial tear of that tendon that was real painful.
And I said, Dr. Connor, I need your help.
2 cortisone shots gave Scott relief, but only temporarily.
That lasted probably about 4 or 5 weeks and came right back.
Cortisone will make it feel better in the short term, but it doesn't do anything to heal it.
Probably took about a year and a half to really get to the point that I needed something besides cortisone.
Of course, he didn't want to have surgery any more than any of the rest of us, and so what we do in that setting is we get an MRI.
Scott's MRI confirmed a partial tear of the ligament.
And here's an example of an MRI of the elbow where there's see this white area in here is a partial tear. It's supposed to be all dark through there, and this is all swelling on each side.
To avoid surgery, Dr. Connor decided to try platelet-rich plasma, or PRP. It's used for treatment on ligaments, tendons, and muscle injuries.
And I said, hey, I'm game for anything. I mean, if there's a chance that my elbow's not going to hurt anymore, let's try it.
So what exactly is platelet-rich plasma? Well, in short, it's a way of getting the body to use its own platelets to heal itself faster. First, a small vial of blood is taken from the patient.
And it goes in just like a normal blood, and we'll put it in this centrifuge and close it up and spin it down for 5 minutes.
The high-speed spinning process separates the plasma from the other blood components.
And so at the end of that 5-minute period, we take it out, and what happens in that setting is that this blood will have the red blood at the bottom, but the platelets will be at the top because they've been separated out.
The platelets are then extracted from the vial and injected directly into the injured area of the patient.
And we can actually take off that layer of platelets, which is essentially the patient's own concentrated healing factors, and inject it into an area that we're trying to get to heal.
Those platelets have been shown in studies to help soft tissue injuries significantly by speeding up recovery time.
The one thing that's so good about it is it's a patient's own healing factor, so it doesn't come from a donor or a lab. It's not artificial. There's no chance of rejection or anything along those lines, and so it's intuitively makes a lot of sense.
The whole process takes only about 20 minutes, with the biggest discomfort being the needle itself.
It's got essentially no risk other than the discomfort of the injection, and can really be helpful and keep them out of the operating room.
Depending on the location and severity of the injury, the average time for full recovery is generally 4 to 6 weeks.
It didn't work on me that way. 2 days after I was injected, I started feeling relief. A week, I had no more pain.
But the nice thing about it is that a patient doesn't have to stop his or her life like in a post-operative setting.
So it definitely worked on me. It's incredible.
And thanks to PRP, Scott is back to doing what he loves, when he's not selling cars, of course. For Carolina Impact, I'm Jason Terzis reporting.
Thanks so much, Jason. Some of the world's most elite athletes have used PRP for quicker injury recovery, including golfer Tiger Woods. An interesting side note, PRP is even used as a way of reducing hair loss. Well, finally tonight, an inspiring look at what's possible when creativity and engineering combine with dedicated doctors to solve a problem. 2 doctors here in Charlotte have developed a breakthrough procedure to help people who have lost fingers. They've figured out how to get their hand working like it used to. Now people are calling and coming to Charlotte from all over the world. Carolina Impact's Suzanne Stevens joins us in the studio with more.
This breakthrough procedure you talked about began in a way that might surprise you. The doctors were brainstorming, they were problem solving, and they sketched it out on a napkin, believe it or not. Now the technique is doing more than helping people regain full use of their hands. It's giving people their lives back.
Eddie Chapman spends a lot of time at home now in Lincolnton. Look closely. After losing 3 fingers in a machine accident at work, he's not working now. He's not doing a lot of hunting or fishing like he used to either. He's not able to completely tie his shoe. But here's what he can and is doing. He comes to Charlotte once a month to meet with a team of orthopedic surgeons, other patients, and therapists. These are the 2 surgeons who developed what's called the starfish procedure, a procedure that gives him what he didn't think was possible: 5 fully functioning fingers.
No, I just thought I wouldn't have any fingers. I found out about the new procedure about 6 months after I lost my fingers.
What'd you think?
I thought, oh boy. I thought, I'm gonna do this. I said, I'm gonna go through everything they want me to do.
Basically, a partial hand prosthetic would close and open. So basically you functioned like a hook. Now, after patients have had the starfish procedure, they can move each finger naturally without even thinking about it.
The surgery itself takes about 2 hours. Doctors move the muscles on the hand into a different place so they can respond to the electrodes for each individual finger on a prosthetic. The surgeons have now done this 7 times with no failures.
Once we were able to get the prosthetic made and have it put on the hand, to see him think about moving each of those fingers and controlling it on a prosthetic hand without any training was an amazing, amazing feeling.
On this particular visit, Eddie is having his prosthetic refit after an adjustment surgery to one of his fingers. He remembers when it worked the very first time. He spent 4 hours trying to retrain his finger muscles because, remember, that's all he had left.
You know, I wanted to move that finger, so I had to think real hard and work that muscle. I had to work each muscle for each finger, so I had to learn how to do that. I had to learn how to manipulate that muscle to make that finger move the way I wanted it to move.
So the doctors at OrthoCarolina came up with the idea and developed the surgery, but they couldn't create the actual hand. They had to team up with a prosthetics company. They chose Hanger Clinic here in Charlotte.
This is part scientific laboratory, part manufacturing plant, and part art studio. The technicians work with the plaster cast of the patient's hand, so they know where to put the sensors on the prosthetic hand. This very room is where the engineers realized they could create what the surgeons wanted. Mike Jenks is on that team and remembers the moment.
Put the electrode sites on the back of the gentleman's hand, and we're like, all right, I want you to think, you know, move your middle finger. I want you to think, move your ring finger. And the fingers moved. And he thought, well, that's what they're supposed to do. We're flipping out, going, oh my gosh, this is so great, it actually worked.
There are a lot of moving parts, so to speak, in the prosthetic hand. Electrodes, ratchets, buckles, batteries, fingers, wires, silicone sockets, and more. And the engineers here work with the surgeons to continue researching other breakthroughs.
We can bring ideas to them. They can bring ideas to us. We can push and challenge each other. We can challenge manufacturers to, hey, this is what we think we can do. We need your help to be able to put all this together.
OrthoCarolina uses a team approach for every case. Patients get to meet and learn things from other people who've lost a limb.
A lot of them are heavily depressed, down in the dumps, having pain, and now all of a sudden for them to see, wow, they get a new excitement, a new outlook on life, a new vigor.
And the doctors learn a lot from the patients.
Because we have a special clinic like this, we spend a lot of time with them, and I think we really grow close to each other, get a lot of time to listen to them, and that's how we tweak the prosthetics and make them better.
I was just so grateful. I mean, it was just, and you know, I can open a door again. I can pull my pants up. I can zip my coat up.
So life is good for Eddie in Lincolnton, thanks to a team of innovative doctors in Charlotte.
I do have to tell you, not everyone is a candidate for the surgery. You do have to have enough finger muscles and nerves left in the hand that still work. But word is out, and OrthoCarolina will soon start consulting with other doctors around the world to do this.
Thanks so much, Suzanne. Doctors are also working on a study with children who were born without fingers to see if they can help them too. Well, it could be argued that the most vibrant communities invest in the health of its residents. We are fortunate to live in an area with award-winning hospitals and world-class doctors. We have only begun to feel the impact of the work being done in our own backyard. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. Look forward to seeing you back here again on Carolina Impact, my friends. Good night.
A production of PBS Charlotte.